15 things you should never do when visiting Poland. Poland, one of the European Union's member countries, has always been known for offering a wide range of activities to delight its visitors. Its amazing culture, melancholic history, breathtaking sights, and mouth-watering cuisine are only a few of the numerous reasons why people choose to visit this often cold and yet welcoming Central European destination. If you're planning a trip to Poland, knowing what to do and what to avoid doing could mean the difference between a delightful holiday and a nightmarish vacation. Here's a list of the things you should never do when visiting Poland. Number 1. Don't greet over a threshold. One superstition in Poland which has been rooted in ancient times is avoiding the greeting of their guests at the door over a threshold. The locals believe that doing so has negative connotations, and therefore always avoid bidding goodbye, or shaking hands beyond a certain limit. As such, when you meet a Pole, ensure that you do not go overboard in your greeting, or even when bidding goodbye to someone. Number 2, don't talk about religion. Do remember that when in Poland, avoid speaking openly about religion. Indeed, in Poland, religion equates to Catholicism. It is said that about 90% of Poles are Roman Catholics. However, this does not mean that you can openly assume their allegiance to the Church. Although Poland is a Catholic country, not everyone is a church-visiting zealot. Poles have varied levels of devoutness and therefore, one needs to be careful when broaching the topic of religion. Number 3, don't fall for the rural tourism advertisement. One may come across lots of tourism videos while researching your Poland trip. Indeed, there are many beautiful locations in Poland, especially during the winter when skiing is commonplace. There are also lakes located in the north of Poland which will be worth exploring. There are many cool cities everywhere around Poland to visit. For instance, as much as Krakow is amazing, Gdansk and Warsaw are also beautiful cities. Number 4, don't say you are in Eastern Europe. Please do not ever say that you are in Eastern Europe when in Poland. This has a historical reason when there was a split between Western and Eastern Europe. Poles tend to get offended when people categorize Poland as an Eastern European country. The locals seem to want to forget the past and consider themselves more Western than Eastern. Number 5, don't forget to tip. An important practice to remember when in Poland is the act of tipping. This might initially be confusing for a tourist who might be wondering how much to tip for a particular service rendered. Did you know that in Poland, when you say thank you to a staff who comes to pick up your bill, he takes it that you mean you do not want your change? As tipping is common practice in the country, do remember to say thanks only when you are ready to leave, and do not need the staff's help anymore. It is strongly encouraged that you reward good service with cash. Number 6, never arrive without gifts. It is customary for the Poles to bring small tokens when invited to a gathering such as a dinner or a meeting. This is a polite way of showing appreciation for being considered a guest. It doesn't matter if it's a cake, a bottle of wine or some chocolate, what's important is that you show your gratitude for being invited to someone's home, and partake of the feast specially made for you. Oh, and if you plan to bring flowers, make sure that the bud count equals an odd number. Number 7, don't leave without checking the weather. When in Poland, checking the weather is akin to checking the time when going out. It is well worth the effort to check the weather as you do not want to be caught in the wrong clothes. Poland's weather is varied and unpredictable. While winter in Poland can be frigid, summer can be stifling. As such, you may need to change as and when you decide to step out. Number 8, don't imbibe in public. When in Europe, one might think that walking around with alcohol in hand is acceptable. However, in Poland, this is not the case. Not many people know that there is a law in the country which governs drinking alcohol in public. One is not allowed to carry any alcohol in hand when in public spaces. Drinking has to be confined to private spaces like bars, restaurants, beer gardens and homes, of course. Number 9. Get scammed by fake cabs. Fake cab drivers are notorious for taking advantage of tourists, charging them exorbitant fares just to get them to cough up cash, and then harassing and threatening them with violence when they refuse to pay. Always make sure that the taxi you're getting into isn't a fake one. Legit cabs always have both the operator's name and telephone number displayed in clear view on top of the vehicle for everyone to see. Number 10. Don't wear shoes in a Polish home. You might have a Pole friend, or even get the opportunity to visit a Polish home. The Poles, like many other cultures in the world, have the custom of taking off their shoes when entering the home. Since shoes are not allowed in, slippers or bare feet is the norm. Do remember this culture so that you avoid insulting the locals. Number 11. Don't take smiling selfies in Auschwitz. One of the reasons tourists fly to Poland is to visit Auschwitz, one of the worst concentration camps used by Hitler and the Nazis to murder millions upon millions of innocent and helpless Jews during World War II. There are certain rules of etiquette for tourists to observe when visiting Auschwitz, and it is advisable to be sensitive to them in order to avoid offending other people. Always remember that it is not okay to take smiling photos while in Auschwitz. The heartbreaking stories of the events that happened there during World War II are not things to smile about, nor are they to be considered amusing. Number 12. Don't jaywalk. In some other countries, it might not be that big a deal to cross the street anywhere it seems convenient. In Poland, you might get slapped with a 500 ZL fine. If you want to shell out the $136 US to cover it, then cross the street freely. Otherwise, cross at the appointed intersections. Number 13. Don't forget that pickpockets are a thing. In areas where a lot of tourists congregate, your odds increase that a pickpocket is lurking around. If you leave your goods unattended, they will get ripped off. Just keep a hand on your souvenirs, and an eye on your wallet while you're taking in Poland's sights. Number 14. Don't travel alone after dark. As with every other urban area in the world, it's a good idea to stick to groups when you're outdoors after dark in Krakow and Warsaw. Again, crime isn't prevalent in Poland, but it does exist and it helps to remain mindful. Number 15. Don't forget to have an ID. It's important to carry an ID at all times in Poland. Rather than carry your passport around, it's also an option to just bring your ID from home, along with a passport photocopy. Polish police usually don't bother the tourists at all, but it's always a good idea to have an ID just in case. Thanks for watching. Make sure to subscribe to this channel.